India and China are about to be consuming much more wheat than they produce, along with Japan and a couple other countries. And that's going to be an issue. Wheat is the number one consumed cereal grain by humans. By far is the most versatile cereal grain because you can get a wide range of products out of it. It's adaptable to various climates, and of course, it's very nutritionally dense. If you look at this chart of wheat production and consumption, you see that the world has been consuming much more wheat than we're producing. A lot of that is led by China. They have been trying to ramp up production, but it is not matching the growth of consumption. India has managed to stay ahead of demand for a while, but it looks like consumption is catching up to production. And these are the two most populous countries in the world, totaling about 2.85 billion people, and it looks like India just passed China over the past few years. China is the world's largest producer of wheat, about 17% of the supply. India is number 2, Russia is number 3, and America is tied with Russia. But let's just say the US is number 4. China is the largest agricultural producer in the world, and it makes up about 7.3% of their GDP. India is number 2. It's about 17%. Russia is the 5th largest agricultural producer. It's about 4% of their GDP. And for the United States, it's about 0.6% of our economic output, which means out of the top 5 agricultural producing countries, the United States is the least dependent on that growth for their GDP. Like I said, Russia is one of the top 5 producers of wheat, and they are encountering weather problems, which is dropping moisture levels, which means their wheat output might actually start to drop. And water is a huge issue when it comes to these top 5 economies. Historically, China and India have been known for their rice production. Well, producing 1 kilogram of rice requires about 2,500 to 5,000 liters of water, while a kilogram of wheat only requires 900 liters. Not only is it a fraction of the water required for rice, it is also much more versatile. Look at China's rice production and consumption. Both have been dropping in parallel like a stone. Out of the top 5 leading agri countries, only the United States and Brazil have a plentiful water supply, while the United States by far has the most water security, which is why it's going to stay an agricultural leader and will most likely be able to leverage the world market if they ever need to for this cereal grain. Also one of the reasons why China, Canada, and a bunch of other countries have been buying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of acres of real estate. And before you even think about it, no, China does not have a lot of agricultural land in the US compared to other countries. Only 3% of our land is foreign owned. The largest holder of that land is Canada. They have about 4 million acres, while China has about 250,000. So Canada has almost 20 times more land than China. And right below water in terms of importance, fertilizer is another key component in these agriculture producing countries. Of all the top 5 cereal grains, corn or maize consumes the most fertilizer by far, which is why we haven't seen China or India switch from rice over to maize. They've been going over to wheat because it just seems to be the least maintenance one. While Russia is the world's top wheat exporter, they are also the top exporter of fertilizer. 15% of all fertilizer exports come from Russia. Since the West has been sanctioning Russia, that's why we've seen such an increase in not only prices of wheat, but also anything that comes out of the ground, because that requires fertilizer to grow. Fortunately, Canada and the United States are also major fertilizer producers, and they have been increasing their production to fix the supply disruption. And last but not least, we have to talk about which country has the most farmland. The United States has the top 389 million hectares, but India has almost as much as we do, and that's very important. We have 385 million hectares, while China has 295, and they are competing neighbors, especially when it comes to the production of wheat. And that country has been investing heavily in using, cultivating, and exporting wheat. So much that the US, Russia, and China feel threatened by how much wheat India will be able to produce. They have the land for it, they have the largest population in the world, they are water scarce, and wheat requires a lot less water than rice, so it's a no-brainer for them. That'll make Japan, the Philippines, Nigeria, Indonesia, and Egypt very happy because they are very large wheat net importers. Of course, you can't forget Saudi Arabia. Look at the disparity between wheat consumption and production. Right now, Saudi Arabia relies on the US, Canada, Australia, a couple other countries for their wheat imports. If India becomes the major net exporter of wheat, who do you think Saudi Arabia is going to buy them from because it's so much closer? Transport costs would be nil. And remember, Saudi Arabia is one of the most powerful economies in the world. Of course, we all know India does have a long way to go before they make this kind of revolution, but I think they will do it. Meantime, Saudi Arabia is not only tied to the US dollar through selling its oil, they are also very beholden to the US and just the West for their wheat imports. And with all of the water scarcity and all of the people consuming more wheat than they produce, what do you think happens to the price of wheat? Yeah, it's been skyrocketing since 2016, and it's cooled off a little bit from 2023 to 2024, but it is still quite high. Overall, if you look at the net deficit of wheat consumption versus production, it looks like the United States is the most heavily poised to gain the advantages of this, especially with water security. Brazil is very water secure as well, but they are the world's 17th largest wheat producer, while the US is about 3 or 4. My name is the Geo Husar. I hope you learned a lot from this presentation. If you like it, give me a follow. Tomorrow around 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be interviewing Robert Rapier. He is an international energy expert who writes for Forbes. Thanks for watching.